The fluorescent lights above the supermarket hummed softly, but to Mahira they sounded like a cruel countdown. Every second that passed felt like another reminder of the thin line separating dignity from desperation. Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the handle of the cart, not because the metal was cold, but because her wallet, tucked deep inside her worn handbag, carried the weight of numbers she already knew would not add up. Around her, life moved normally. Carts rolled, shelves were restocked, laughter echoed faintly from distant aisles. But inside her chest, a storm raged so violently it threatened to spill through her eyes at any moment. Before we go any further, take a brief moment to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Your presence here matters more than you know. Mahira had once loved grocery shopping. There had been a time when it felt like a simple routine, almost therapeutic. Back then, her life had been stitched together by stability, a modest apartment, a predictable income, and dreams that stretched far beyond survival. But life had a way of rewriting plans without warning. A sudden illness had taken her husband Aram, leaving behind not only grief, but a mountain of medical bills. The world did not pause for mourning. Rent still demanded payment. Utilities still arrived. The fragile safety net they had built over years disintegrated in months. Mahira learned quickly that tragedy was expensive, and sorrow had no discounts. Now, each trip to the store was not an errand, but a calculation of sacrifice. Every item placed into the cart carried a question: necessity or luxury? Bread was a necessity. Milk was a necessity. Fresh fruit was debated. Snacks were silently denied. Mahira moved slowly down the aisles, her eyes scanning prices with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. She compared brands, weighed sizes, mentally adding totals. Her daughter, Sarah, walked beside her, small fingers occasionally brushing against brightly colored packages, eyes filled with innocent curiosity that only made Mahira's heart ache more. Sarah did not fully understand numbers, but she understood tension. Children always did. She sensed the invisible pressure that clung to her mother like a shadow. Once cheerful and carefree, Mahira now carried a constant tightness in her expression, as if smiling required strength she could no longer spare. Yet Saira never complained. She never threw tantrums like other children. She simply observed, absorbing more than Mahira realized. And that quiet maturity, that unspoken patience, somehow hurt more than any demand could have. They reached the produce section, where colors burst with life: reds, greens, yellows, a cruel display of abundance. Mahira picked up a small bag of apples, hesitating. Sarah loved apples. They reminded her of school lunches from better days, when Mahira could pack them without fear. The price tag, however, felt unforgiving. Mahira gently returned the bag to its place, pretending to adjust something else. A tiny motion, almost invisible, yet heavy with meaning. The cart was modest, painfully so. Essentials only, no room for indulgence, no margin for error. As Mahira moved toward the dairy aisle, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. The mental arithmetic, the constant restraint, the silent guilt, it all accumulated into a fatigue deeper than physical tiredness. It was the weariness of someone fighting a battle no one else could see. Near the end of the aisle, another shopper stood. Ramiz, a man in his early 30s, holding a handbasket. He was unremarkable at first glance, just another customer navigating an ordinary day. But his eyes occasionally drifted toward Mahira and Saira, drawn by something subtle yet unmistakable. Perhaps it was Mahira's strained movements, or the way Saira watched her mother with unusual attentiveness. There was a story there, written not in words, but in gestures, and it stirred something quietly human within him. Mahira stopped once more, staring into the cart. She pulled out her phone, opening the calculator, double-checking what she already feared. Even with careful choices, the total teetered dangerously close to the balance in her account. A single unexpected price variation could collapse everything. Anxiety tightened its grip. She began removing items one by one, each motion deliberate, each removal a small heartbreak. The cereal Syra liked disappeared first, then the yogurt, then the slightly better brand of rice. The cart grew barer, mirroring the hollow feeling spreading inside her. Syra watched silently, her young face unreadable. She had learned that this ritual meant something serious. It meant choices were being made, invisible lines being drawn. When Mahira reached for a small chocolate bar resting near the edge of the cart, an item Syra had picked up earlier without asking, her hand paused. The price was insignificant compared to larger items, yet in Mahira's world, insignificance had vanished. Even small comforts required justification. She placed the chocolate bar back on the shelf, her chest tightening. The gesture, though necessary, carried an unbearable sting. It was not about chocolate. It was about what it symbolized. A mother unable to grant even the simplest joy without consequence. As Mahira turned the cart toward the checkout lanes, Syra's gaze lingered behind. There was no frustration, no visible disappointment, only a quiet, thoughtful sadness far too old for her years. And then, with a softness that seemed almost fragile, she gently tugged at her mother's sleeve. There was no dramatic pleading, no childish insistence, just one more request, delicate and hesitant, like a candle flickering against a storm. Mahira felt it instantly, that familiar twist of guilt and helplessness. She did not need to hear words to understand. She already knew. The answer, however, was imprisoned by reality. Her throat tightened, her eyes burned. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, hoping the gesture would suffice, hoping it would spare them both the pain of explanation. But Syra asked again, not with impatience, but with a quiet hope that pierced deeper than any tantrum ever could. It was not the request itself that shattered Mahira, it was the trust behind it, the belief that perhaps this time, somehow, the answer might change. From a short distance away, Ramiz observed the moment unfold. Something about the scene unsettled him. It was not loud or dramatic, yet it carried a gravity that resonated unmistakably. He saw the tension in Mahira's posture, the silent plea in Syra's eyes, and the invisible weight of circumstances neither of them had chosen. Compassion, often dormant in the rush of everyday life, stirred with unexpected force. Mahira knelt slightly, her face close to Syra's, struggling to maintain composure. The world around them blurred into irrelevance. Pride battled despair. Love wrestled with limitation. And in that suspended moment, before another refusal could deepen the ache, an unexpected presence entered their fragile orbit. Ramiz stepped forward with careful humility, his movements devoid of spectacle. There was no grandiosity, no performative heroism. Only a simple, profoundly human impulse to ease a burden he could neither fully understand nor ignore. Without disrupting Mahira's dignity, without turning kindness into theater, he made a gesture so gentle it almost dissolved into the ordinary rhythm of the store. Mahira froze, confusion mingling with disbelief. Emotions collided, embarrassment, gratitude, shock, creating a whirlwind too complex for immediate comprehension. Life had conditioned her to expect indifference, not intervention. Tears, long restrained by necessity, surged with unstoppable force. Syra, sensing the shift, though not grasping every nuance, clung to her mother with quiet relief. The supermarket lights still hummed, carts still rolled. But for Mahira, the suffocating pressure that had shadowed every step lifted just enough to let hope breathe again. Kindness did not erase hardship. Bills still awaited. Struggles remained. Yet something immeasurable had changed. A reminder had pierced the fog of exhaustion. That humanity, though often obscured, still existed in quiet, unexpected corners of the world. Before we reach the ending, take a second to leave a comment below. A simple heart, a kind word, or your thoughts about this moment can mean more than you imagine. Mahira left the store that day carrying more than groceries. She carried a fragile but radiant spark. The realization that even in seasons of relentless difficulty, compassion could arrive unannounced, reshaping despair into resilience. And Syra, hand tucked securely in her mother's, walked with the lightness of a child whose small hope had, against all odds, been answered. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of empathy or the silent battles people fight every day, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive. Because sometimes the world changes not through grand gestures, but through quiet moments in ordinary places, under humming lights, beside half-empty carts, where one small act of understanding becomes someone else's reason to keep going.